Welcome to Country acknowledges our First Peoples, the custodians who continue their stewardship across our vast lands. We invite you to be our guests and make a true connection.
Ya welcome ya, Iorokan.
Minjika.
Yapalina.
Yumbro.
Nanga.
Kapmon.
Yandane Godada Goda.
Welcome to Kupari Wara Country, guys. You're now in Kuyu Beach, Kuyu. Come on down.
Womanjika.
Chingiwala.
Welcome, guys. My name's Dustin Maloney.
Full call to welcome yous.
Natma. Welcome.
Yalada Jangura. Garida. Kupari Wara Bubu. Kuyu.
Koji Eagle.
Katamwa Woman Indie.
Hi, I'm Rhoda Roberts, a proud Widgeable woman and a member of the Welcome to Country board. It is my pleasure to be here today to announce this amazing series of events. The journey begins with Welcome to Country. You can imagine the unexpected. You know, taking a First Nations travel experience is much more than simply just taking a photograph of our ancient landscape. It is about the depth of listening, witnessing the diversity of our cultures, the mystery of rituals, the food, the language, the story and the song. Up until the 8th of December, we're featuring a series of free online events, and we'll give you a sneak preview of 17 life-changing experiences. These are just a taste of what we have on offer. And so now I'm going to hand you over to your next cultural experience with some amazing guides from across the country. Enjoy. Hi, my name's Bronwyn Bancroft. I'm a Bundjalung woman and my family come from a place near Linesville at the back of Grafton. I'm extremely proud of what I do as an Aboriginal woman. I'm currently living on country in Byron Bay, even though this isn't my family's area, but it does feel great to be home on country and not living in the city. Welcome to Country to me is an acknowledgement of respect for the original custodians of this land who looked after it, to allow us not to desecrate it, but to celebrate it. So when I see a Welcome to Country done and the smoking, it means that I can feel that the people are being cleansed. To allow them to even set a foot on our country, they need to be cleaned of everything that they might think or bring with them. We can just cut that away. So I absolutely think it's imperative that we do acknowledgement Welcome to Country from appropriate people, but it brings a sense of peacefulness to all people who participate. I stopped doing painting as a degree because I had a racist teacher who told me that I shouldn't paint Aboriginal stuff because it was shit and they didn't do painting like that at the art school. Then I migrated to Sydney with my husband and became a Sydney dweller for a while. I didn't know anyone in Sydney. Actually, when I think about it in retrospect, I look at it and go, holy hell, what was I thinking? One of the most insecure, professions in the world. And basically I sort of haven't looked back. It's been a hard road, but it's been a road of unselfishness. I've actually volunteered probably half of my practicing life. And people say to me, you work for nothing. And I go, no, I work for everything. And I suppose the journey has brought me back home to country here. And I left Sydney 2 years ago and never been better. And completed my PhD at the age of 61, which was last year. So 4 degrees. And I want to emphasize the point that I did those degrees was not for anything to do with me in or like learning or whatever. I wanted to get those degrees so that I could show white people that, and I mean it in a really passionate way, that non-Aboriginal people need to understand, not only, as my dad used to say, you have to be 3 times better than whitey to be actually accepted. Now, I've got 4 degrees, a lifetime of experience. I'm an entrepreneur. I set up the first shop in Sydney by an Aboriginal, like an Aboriginal person, but a woman, independent of any government funding, except Elsa Dixon, who used to get some money for me for wages for my Aboriginal girls who've all gone on to be connected to art. I've done this, and still in this current society, you have to fight to be taken seriously. If I was a non-Aboriginal artist, I wouldn't even have to do a degree to be taken seriously. It really is about the dichotomy in our society when, you know, our artists are treated really, really weirdly because, you know, you've got a whole lot of stuff from the Central Desert, which gets accepted immediately and propelled by the art studios, and then you've got a lot of artists doing work across the country that isn't Red Desert work, and there's nothing to say that there isn't. There's support in all areas for that. I love all the work that people do, but I think we need to have an understanding that there is a richness, diversity and cultural awareness across all of Australia by Aboriginal artists, and that needs to be celebrated. It needs to be understood that this is a form of livelihood, it's independence, it's self-esteem, and it brings pride and also cultural reclamation. So for me, art is not about what galleries want, and that's something that a lot of people get driven by. What propels me and my art is my personal storytelling about my family, their place in the history of this country, and how I ended up being this woman now living in Bundjalung country, in the nation of the Bundjalung people, and understanding my place in the world and the history impact of what colonisation did to our family. And ultimately it's a lack of education. We should have had Aboriginal studies in the curriculum, and as we know historically, Aboriginal art, history, education, political history has been largely ignored in this country. And until we infiltrate the departments of education in every state across this country and start to get people more interested in Aboriginal history, art, intellectuality, like we develop some of the most amazing things in the world, like a boomerang. Like, how the hell does anyone work out to make a throwing instrument that comes back and kills something on the way that you can get for tucker? So smart people, amazing longevity in the country, skills in the highest degree, and yeah, ultimately it's all about respect for me. So I want the curriculum to be displaced for English history, and I want Aboriginal history. You're living on Aboriginal land, always was, always will be. And if you want to be on this country, then you learn about the original custodians. In 1992, I was approached by a lady called Diana Kidd to do a little book called The Fat and Juicy Place. Several black and white drawings. Never entertained the idea of being a book illustrator ever. I actually did a book illustration, a book at art school, and was told I was really crap at it. So it was like about this little Aboriginal kid and a white kid and meeting and having a really good friendship, which is what we can do, you know, we can be friends. So I kind of had this sort of fear of doing book illustration, but when she came to me with this thing about this little kid that was kind of lost in the city, I thought, oh, I could do that, just black and white drawings, it's easy. So that was the beginning of it. And then HarperCollins, because once you get printed, then people start to take notice of your work or whatever. And then HarperCollins came to me and they had 3 books that were by Roland Robinson. Now, Roland Robinson was an anthropologist, non-Aboriginal, who used to travel around Australia and collect stories from Aboriginal people. largely you could give them a small amount of money, maybe £1, to storytell. And as you know, we exist in an oral storytelling tradition. So basically kind of nick their stories. So what I was presented with was 3 stories that I could do: the Whalers, Uncle Minna, and the Rangan. So when they presented that, which was a big contract for me and it was a big job, and Oodgeroo Noonakal was very sick. So I had 6 weeks to do, 54 colour plates and 16 black and white. And I got them all done, and she got to see the proofs before she died, which I was very grateful for. She didn't actually want me to be the illustrator. She wanted someone from Queensland, and I was cool with that. But time was running out. And also it was good for me to sort of memorialise some of her stories in images. It just had to be done. Anyway, so that was that. Then the contract came from HarperCollins after that, and they were like, oh, you can do this book, and Roland Robinson owns the copyright. And by then I was already big on copyright, ownership, moral rights, intellectual rights, who owns the story. So I basically said no to the contract. And you remember, I'm a single parent of 2 children, self-employed and an artist. And I said no. And they said, why? And I said, because we have to find the descendants of the original storyteller, and the royalties are nothing. 1.5% or something. So it doesn't add up to anything, but they got their name on it, like the Umbara Cultural Centre for Percy Mumbler's story. So they negotiated Percy Mumbler's. So there was recognition put back. And Lucy Daly from Boyugal, there was recognition put back for Aboriginal people sharing their stories, not giving their stories away. So once we chased up all of the commitment by them for sourcing the Aboriginal descendants, we then progressed with the contract, and that was my first sort of really big go at it. And now, so that was 1992, so it's 2020, and I'm just doing my 44th book, which is for my daughter, Ella, who's written a beautiful story. So I'm just hoping to complete that in the next 2 weeks. And my publishers have got heaps of more books for me to do, but I don't know, books, they're very hard, they take a long time, and there's a big commitment to do them. So the one thing that I know has been a privilege for me now, getting older and having produced so many books without a lot of acclaim. I don't do it for the book lists or whatever, because they're still into umbrellas and red gumboots and little kids splashing around in puddles, and I'm really interested in Aboriginal stories, what it is to be Aboriginal in Australia today, what it's like to be on country, old time stories, maybe what your pop told you, with permission, biographical information, memoirs. I'm really into that. And that doesn't often fit the non-Aboriginal paradigm for what books are meant to represent in this country. But one of the things that I know that's really starting to hit home for me as an older Aboriginal woman is the idea that I'm now into a second generation. So, 1992, kids were starting to read my books. Now parents are 35 having babies, and I'm getting into the second generation of the psyche of kids in this country, because a lot of kids the teachers are using my stuff as art. I think they call it provocatives, or some way to provoke more ideas in children around the country, as in the country, not around the country. And so that feels really great to me, because we have to change the psychological imbalance in this country around Aboriginal people, and we can't keep romanticising particular areas of Aboriginal Australia. We must deal with the complexity of all of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters in this country. So the best way to do that is to get a lot of non-Aboriginal and migrant kids reading and understanding and exploring through an Aboriginal lens what it's like to be in this country and the respect that might flow from that, because we do not have the respect that is required from the current government or really anyone. I mean, you know, Turnbull saying no to things, you know, Makarrata, and then other people denying it, and Bob Hawke Bob Hawke, he denied it too, because we were calling for a treaty in '88. That got ignored. And Gough Whitlam was really the only person that fundamentally wanted to really make a change politically in this country in a leadership way. And the country is poorer for that lack of leadership around recognition of Aboriginal people. So I think my idea is, in being a teacher, a mentor, an illustrator, an artist, a mother, is to try and shape the minds of younger people so that when they grow up they're not racist. It'd be really cool to exist in a world where no one thought they were better than somebody else. So I'd love to see that achieved. And I'm sure that I'm working in a microscopic way, but at least I feel like I'm working towards something, you know, basically respect.
Welcome to Country acknowledges our First Peoples, the custodians who continue their stewardship across our vast lands. We invite you to be our guests and make a true connection. Welcome to Country is a non-profit organisation. It's at the helm of an Aboriginal man and it's run by Aboriginal staff.
All Australians should be passionate about our own country, and Aboriginal culture is a key part of that.
We are the original storytellers, and if everyone understands that message, I think that we'll have a far better future for all of Australia.
It's about learning and connecting.
As we know, it's the oldest living culture in the world.
Simply is the premier site to find amazing experiences and great products around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australia.
Got to have a great website. So what was needed was to have a common platform that could do the marketing, the sales, all those things that small businesses, whether they're Indigenous or not, struggle over. So people can focus on the thing they're passionate about and deliver that business.
It's about creating employment and economic opportunities for the community. That's the number one thing.
The best thing is by purchasing from us, they are directly giving back and supporting Indigenous communities, artists and their families.
The key is to enable them to stay on their country or in their city and be able to give them a platform to really flourish and create self-sufficiency.
It is basically self-determination and learning about country through the narrative of our lens.
We're not doing this because we want to put money into our pockets, but rather we want to see community benefit from what we're doing.
We want to be able to show that we're in control and managing our stories. We want to be able to share those stories, and we want to be able to create our own jobs and create our own economies.
For me and my wife's business, we've got the daughters all working. When we started, we had the brothers involved, we had the aunties involved, we had the uncles involved. Yeah, so we show them what Paraka look like and get them to throw a spear also as well.
We're rich in culture and history, and I said we need to share that because that's where we're going to get changes.
It's a great initiative, you know, really connecting with Indigenous tourism, grassroots people, teaching culture and educating people.
This is a form of livelihood, it's independence, it's self-esteem, and it brings pride.
Now that I'm here working for Dreamtime for the last 2 years, I've actually became a Master Reef Guide.
You know, some of us are really reaping the benefits of that in terms of employment, you know, self-empowerment, you know, self-sustainability, economic development in our communities.
It is really time that
this country started to embrace the importance, the knowledge, the power and the beauty of Aboriginal culture.
I have always wanted for non-Indigenous people in this country to actually experience, meet and connect with Aboriginal people.
When you visit a destination, you hear that local story, you feel the seasons, you witness the passion that people have on the land that has been there since time immemorial. There's nothing quite like it.
Anytime any Australian's looking for an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander cultural experience, the first thing they'll think of is welcometocountry.com.
To continue your journey and make a true connection right across Australia, visit us at welcometocountry.com.